Hi, everybody. David Nour. I want to welcome you back to another episode of our Curve Benders podcast with live guests. So I'm elated that you're here. We're broadcasting right now on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. So whatever channel you're joining us from. So thanks for being here. My guest today, Subir Chowdhury, is one of the world's most renowned experts around this idea of Lean Six Sigma and really operational efficiency and reducing, as was the title of our podcast together this morning, reducing variations, reducing waste. Subir, welcome.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
It is good to have you. For those that may not know as much about you, can you start by sharing a little about your background and kind of professionally? You've written a number of books, and I'd love to hear how you've arrived here.
I was born in Bangladesh, in Chittagong, Bangladesh, and I came to United States in 1991, did my master's degree in industrial management. And then after that, I joined in General Motors as a quality and systems engineer. And from there, it took off. And my first book came out in 1996 called The QS 9000 Pioneers, which is a automotive quality standard. And after that, I pretty much, the book took off. And after that, I left at the age of 27 to work with Dr. Taguchi, is a Japanese quality guru, to work as a consultant. At a very young age, started there and never looked back. And after that, so far I've written 15 books. And in fact, working on the 16th one right now. And I'm very blessed to work with some of the world's finest leaders, mostly Fortune 500 companies, as well as had a great pleasure working with, in a advisory capacity in a lot of nonprofit organizations as well. And my company name is ASI Consulting Group. We have offices in 9 different countries, and more than 100 consultants work around the world to help our clients to become better.
So can you comment on key trends around operational efficiency, around, you and I talked about, Six Sigma's been around for a while. It has evolved, certainly. What are some of the trends you've noticed through this pandemic that you're excited about, and which ones really concern you?
Yeah, so right now, as you know, the Six Sigma has been matured almost for the last 20 years. And but one of the things what I'm finding is that majority of the organizations which really got the best benefit out of the process improvement, either Six Sigma or Design for Six Sigma or something called Leo, I kind of introduced in my book called The Ice Cream Maker in 2005. It took off. One of the challenges, what I find, even pandemic or not pandemic, is the senior leadership always felt quality is not their business or process improvement is not their business. So they tend to pass the Six Sigma initiative or process improvement initiative to vice president of quality or vice president of operations, rather than themselves taking the leadership role and understand what the truly true ingredient of Six Sigma, or because the Six Sigma is all about making the operations better, most efficient, right? So any CEO should think about that way, because efficiency directly connected with the finance, right? So you can have more profit, right, if you have a fantastic, efficient organization. So majority of the organizations where I find the best result, like even organizations like, for an example, General Motors, recent example, General Motors, after Mary Barra came in, she's such an amazing leader. She personally take the initiative and she called it operational excellence and led the effort on her own. And that's why the results is amazing. So after 5 years of operational excellence, GM saving is maybe close to $10 billion, right? That is unheard of, right? And let me tell you, it's the same GM. If you really think about 20 years ago versus today, GM is becoming much more efficient, not only in the efficiency perspective. Think about the innovation that they are one of the forefront right now. I think at least in the United States, to get into all of their fleet of cars into the electric cars, right, by 2030. That is a very bold move. If you really think about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, did GM ever think to go into that and become one of the leaders I don't think so. But so that needs some CEOs, commitment and understanding. So somebody like Mary herself attending the training, doing a project herself. Think about doing a Six Sigma project herself is unbelievable. So I've seen that type of results in Caterpillar, in other organizations, like even in Chrysler. I've seen some of the results. So my thought process is that, as I discussed with you in my podcast, that as you can see, that a lot of the time organizations, they are not looking into the process very seriously. Because look, it's a very simple, David. If there's a work, there's a process. If there's a process, there's a variation, right? And majority of the process, if it is broken, right, that is the reason the variation happened. And variation is the evil, because variation is the reason you're wasting tons of money, right? So I kind of feel that irrespective of pandemic or not, we must make sure the organization becomes more process focused.
So I fully buy in on your assertion that when there's processes, there's operational efficiency, there's consistency in the outcome, the output. Subir, there's a school of thought that said one of the painful truths about this global pandemic was we took some of that operational efficiency. I'm thinking just-in-time inventory, for example, to the extremes, where most of the hospitals didn't have, the PPEs or didn't have the supplies they needed for this surge of patients. And those weren't elective surgeries. We need masks and we need shields and we need, garments. And you remember seeing news stories of frontline healthcare professionals wearing garbage bags because they didn't have garbs. Where's the right balance between sufficient operational efficiency and that just-in-time inventory, and not so lean that you get into trouble, so lean that you're not prepared for that next disruption that could hit your operations?
So I think David, as you know, the core fundamental issue is that I think that belongs to the whole failure. What I call it is a failure of the pandemic initial first 6 months or 9 months is American government never believed this can happen in the 21st century. They never believed in it. They have a complete denial. And it's not a Republican issue. It is not a Democratic issue. It is a issue as an America and government, right? So they're not at all prepared. So if you have a complete denial, I'm perfect. This can happen in India. This can happen in China, not in America. If that is the mindset they have, then I kind of feel that it doesn't matter, because that's why they're not prepared at all, right? So they never demanded that. Now, because Americans is a very reactive, as a culture, we are amazing firefighter, right? We are not fire preventer, right? That is a problem, right? Once you have that type of attitude, it's very difficult. So even why the Six Sigma even became popular. In fact, I wrote a book called The Design for Six Sigma after doing Six Sigma, because Six Sigma is all about reactive. If you truly wanted to improve, if you're truly a visionary company, you should invest hugely on the design for Six Sigma so that you design the product and process right at the first time. So if America can think of, I can give you a prime example right now. Even right now, if there is for God forbid, if there is I'm in Los Angeles, if there is a 9 magnitude of earthquake happen in California, I think we'll be in deep trouble. I don't think California is even prepared. Not prepared at all, right? So I think that is not, even the fire every year, because the reason is that we are so reactive culture, not thinking about what are the worst thing can happen. Will we be prepared like Japan? Absolutely not. Are we even close to Japan with respect of earthquake preventative preparedness? Answer is no, right?
So let's build on that. So, yeah. And by the way, our crisis resilience research found the same, as I said, how woefully underprepared, not just the healthcare system, but many leadership teams and organizations were for this level of disruption, this level of global disruption to kind of what, first is supply, then demand, then figuring out our talent and how do we work together. So my question of you is, in thinking about that design for Six Sigma, in thinking about this post-pandemic world, Subir, one of my biggest fears is that we don't learn anything from this pandemic. We learn no lessons, and we're just going to go back to, which I don't believe there's any going back, but we go back to doing what we've always done. What do you believe that CEO and senior leadership teams need to think about differently about designing for Six Sigma, about their operations in the post-pandemic world? Can you give our audience 2, 3 tips to really focus on?
So the number one thing I kind of feel that, the most important part is that, first of all, the CEO to have the recognition of there is a problem. If there's no recognition, then there is no, if their mindset is, hey, already pandemic is gone, we are all good, sad, no problem and no issues, right? If that is the mindset, then there is because when the pandemic came, I don't think we even know it will hit us that hard. We never even comprehend that. So CEO always have to have that vision to thinking about that, yes, there will be a problem. So every day when they wake up, they have to think about, I have a problem, right? If you have that kind of mindset, then you go to the design board and saying that, okay, what can I design? And I have a 3-step process I talked about. It's called listen, enrich, optimize. Listen, enrich, optimize. So the first thing would be listening to the customer. And when I talked about the customer, it can be internal customer or it can be external customers. So who is the internal customers? Internal customers is your employees, so that means if you can make your internal customers, voice of the customer of the internal employees, to figuring it out at all level, what are the trends, what are the issues the organization might be facing in the future, and collect the data. Then also think about the external customers with respect of whomever you are trying to sell the product or services. Try to understand what their importance are. Once you understand the true voice of the customer, then you have to think about that, okay, how can I enrich that? What are the issues our customers are talking? So for an example, for US government, the issue should be US citizens, right? They are the customer. They are so you tell me as an American citizen, when is the last time I can proudly say, oh my God, my government is listening to me?
I think 250. No.
You got my point. See, the problem is that every time I open the television, they're fighting each other. So unless, see, that itself is the major issue. Unless, and they're on top of it, now they're not respectful to each other. That is even more core issue, right? I kind of feel that very strongly about it, because America is going for a huge political leadership crisis. Unless both the parties really put the nation first. They are giving the lip service of nation first, but they are not.
This idea also applies in organizations where you get different functions pointing fingers of it's not my problem, it's their problem, versus how do we focus on that common mission, common vision, or common enemy, which could be overregulation, in solving that friction, solving those gaps in what those customers need.
And that is an excellent point what you mentioned about, because of the marketing, sometimes blame to engineering blame to marketing. That happen all the time, right? So ideally, if you really think about, so listen, enrich, optimize, I talked about, that can apply in every single function. It can apply every single function. So once you understand that, so for an example, an engineering organization, they have to think about, oh, we are a bunch of great engineers, we don't need to listen to the marketing. No. Marketing is collecting the data from the customer, so you have to listen to the marketing. On the other hand, marketing also have to understand how to translate that voice into engineering language, because a lot of the time we lose because of the language is different, right? So their interpretation might be different, right? So once you understand it, that listening to the customer, understand it, then what you do is that you have to enrich your product or service. So you have to focus on, and that enrichment is such a thing that, see, in America, one of the challenges that our culturally we are tuned to, once we put one fire down, then another fire pops up. So, right? And then we try to put that down, then another fire pops up.
It feels like that WhackaMole game. Just
right, WhackaMole engineering, right? We call it as a WhackaMole engineering, right? So the problem is that rather than thinking about where that problem came from the first place? How can we eliminate that and making sure that process is so robust, even if before it happened, can we really prevent it? Or can we really know about that beforehand, right? So that is the reason the optimize comes in, because every single process have to be optimized for perfection, optimized for so that it does not happen, the problem doesn't happen, right? One of the thing I gave a lot of credit to Elon Musk, that when he's developing the electric car, like Tesla electric car, it's not perfect yet, but let me tell you, he is the first, I can confidently say, that who is developing a car with completely sensor based, that which the car, even if you fell asleep, the car will take over and make sure that there's no accident happen, right? So because the whole perspective of his whole thing is that a car should not kill another human being. Yep. So if a CEO have that type of mindset, that my product should not kill at any given time. Now, still there is some incident happen here and there. Yes, he's a very early stage, even though he has been working for last 15, 20 years. But I think we are very close. And he's one of the pioneers to have that kind of so a strong vision.
So talk about that. You've brought up GM, you've brought up, other Caterpillar, other really mature companies and mature industries. Subir, you and I know these mature organizations, it is moving an oil tanker to try to get them to change or shift or culturally embrace a new way of thinking. How do you do that? How do you, let's just say you've got the CEO buy-in. Are you starting a pilot? Are you taking a piece of the business? Are you taking one function? How do you and your team go in?
Yes, that is an excellent question. So typically what we do is that it's not a question of CEO buy-in. It is a CEO personally leading that effort.
So hold on. So it's not just, I get it, I like it, go do it. It's I'm involved.
Yes, I'm involved. So one of the first thing what we do, we go there, we ask the CEO. I don't even take a client unless I meet with the CEO personally and ask, what is your number one pain? Tell me what's your pain. If you just say, Subir, I wanted to do a Six Sigma, I'm not interested. No interest.
I can tell you, I love your comment. Sorry to interrupt you, but on our podcast, you said, is this your baby or my baby?
Yes, absolutely. Right. So the first thing what we do is that we talk with the CEO saying that, tell me your number one pain. Tell me your pain. So, okay, what do you mean by pain? I said, simple, like, is it the money? What is it? Is it the product failure? Is it the recall? What is it? Tell me your pain. That you cannot sleep well. Otherwise, why you are talking to me as a consultant? Only thing I'm interested in knowing the pain. So some CEO, I remember Caterpillar in 1999 when I met with the Glenn Burton was the CEO at that time. When I met with him, he said, Subir, my pain is nothing to do with quality. I said, so what is your pain? He said, no, you cannot solve it. So let's don't talk about it. I said, no. I still wanted to understand what is your pain. So he said, Subir, my pain is Caterpillar is stuck in $20 billion revenue mark. And typically the study has been done that if you are reached to $20 billion mark, then you can become 19, you can become 21. It's very difficult to break through. So my dream is within next 10 years, if I can make my organization to $30 billion revenue from 20 to 30. So I just suddenly came out of my mouth. I just said, oh my God, you have a $10 billion defect. He said, excuse me? I said, you have a $10 billion defect. He said, what do you mean by defect? That is not, I said, in my mind is a defect. So let's figure it out that whatever Six Sigma we do, let us figure it out. How can we take you from 20 billion to 30 billion in 10 years? So basically, we will say our Six Sigma deployment, the process will say that Caterpillar wants to achieve $10 billion revenue mark increase by 2008. That was a 1998 discussion.
So that's a really interesting perspective. You took, it wasn't necessarily broken. You took the upside potential.
Yes.
And you made that the common mission, the common vision of why we're doing this, right? Really driving that almost like a new organizational inertia that if we want to get from this ceiling, this plateau that we've reached to a different level, If you think about that as the defect, that could be that variance that you're talking about optimizing.
So I call it as a kind of a two. I kind of call it as a two-prong approach. One is a short-term vision, one is a long-term vision. So Caterpillar's short-term vision is within 18 months, they wanted to achieve $250 million saving by eliminating all the waste. That is their, within 18 months, $250 million. That is their target. And their long-term vision was, so one is a short-term, 18 months. Long-term vision is in 10 years, they wanted to grow their revenue by $10 billion mark. That is their long-term vision, right? So guess what happened after? So our whole Six Sigma deployment, all the project is literally connected those two vision. So everything is geared towards those two vision. An amazing thing happened, David, was this. After 18 months, they reported $800 million saving instead of 250 million after 18 months. And after 10 years, their revenue did not become 30 billion. Their revenue became 42 billion. 42 billion. So how that happened? The reason what happened is that, see, I call it as a kind of a, when somebody get a drug, they automatically come back for the drug, right? They get hooked. What happened is that in this type of process improvement, when the senior leadership team, like CEO, CFO, CTO, everybody is engaged, everybody is trained, because knowledge is the power. I firmly believe that once the knowledge is transferred properly, once they become educated, because if you ask me today, whenever I go to my client after we transfer the knowledge, what I find, I was the dumbest guy in the room, and my clients are the most talented people in the room. Amazing leaders. Like, very honest with you, my clients enrich my life. My clients taught me so much. Every single day when I wake up, I feel that I'm learning something from my clients, right? And so it's not like they are learning from me. It's just opposite. And on the process, I'm making money, right? That is even.
No, it's a win-win-win all the way around. Subir, are the results? Do you run into scenarios where the results seem too good to be true? Because when you hear, I got to tell, when I hear that's a 100x, right? Or it seems like that is just not possible. So how do you combat that? I think the mindset block that says there is no way we can generate that kind of a return from this type of an initiative.
Simple as this. Is the data-driven thinking, right? Data is the only thing matters. For me, I'm nobody. It's all opinion. So my talk doesn't mean anything. It's about the data. So for an example, in Kellogg's, one of the cereal maker companies, when I met with the president with the organization, so he wants to save $100 million. I said, okay, I don't know about your organization. I don't know if I'm going to find 100 million. So typically what we do, any organization, even GM or Caterpillar, any organization, when you go, first 90 days, we don't solve any problem. No problem solved. None. Zero. What we do, we try to talk to the leaders, find out what is their issues, and make sure we only take, everything is based on project. We only take those projects which we can financially quantify, and organization will give the credit. And then what happened, they have a separate finance. I don't calculate those numbers. I really don't. My team doesn't either. What happened is we'll help them how to calculate. Then their finance organization comes in and say, oh, okay, this particular project, if you solve, this is costing us this much of money. So for an example, a lot of the time, automotive organizations, they have recall issue. So those recalls, they know how much it's costing them. They know. So if that recall, I can prevent it, that has been going on for last 5 years or 3 years. They could not solve that issue. So if I solve that, so the finance will saying that, okay, if you solve, we are going to give the credit to you on that particular project. So what happens? So that means that project is qualified. Typically, almost 95 to 98% efficiency, not 100%, 98% efficiency, I can tell you, every project we select typically get results and solve, because our consultants, they make sure that project those tools can be applied on those projects. So that is the way we kind of calculate that. So
for our audience, if you've joined us late, you've been listening to Subir Chowdhury, one of the 50 most influential management thinkers by Thinkers 50. He's been a pioneer of championing quality movement across the globe with his thought-provoking ideas, with his unique method and approach. I would highly encourage you to jump in if you have questions, comments around quality, around operational efficiency. Subir, you were kind enough to mention, again, a lot of very recognizable organizations. My question of you is this exclusively for the big guys? Or if I'm a small or medium-sized company, or maybe another way to ask this question, is there a floor to the size of the organization that can implement your approach and can still benefit from the cost savings or the revenue upside?
No, I think, lots of small hospitals I've been making a huge impact, just so that, so it's kind of saving lives. So let me give you an example. One of my very good friend, he retired now, named Dr. Mark Rosenblum. He's a neurosurgeon at Henry Ford Health System. He read a copy, of my book called The Ice Cream Maker. It's about the listen, enrich, optimize. So he persuaded me, saying that, Subir, how can I implement this Leo in my organization, right? Because I love the book so much. And even though it's about the ice cream maker, but he is smart enough to figure it out as a physician, how it is. So when I first met with him, I asked him a question. I said, Mark, tell me your number one pain. Same question. So he said, Subir, my number one pain is by the time the patient come under my knife, because he's a neurosurgeon for brain tumor operation and all, they are in a stage 3, a stage 4 cancer. So if I can get them in a stage 1, I may be able to save their life. I may expand their life maybe for another 10, 15 years. I said, okay. So he said, how can you reduce that? How can you reduce? I said, great project, fantastic project. So think about that. So what we found out is that, by the time it comes to his, go to the patient, goes to the first symptom by the time the patient goes to neurosurgeon, that time is between 6 to 9 months. What we did, we came back that between 2 to 3 weeks. Now, process. Because by the process, so what we did, I'm not medicine, I'm not a physician. How the heck we did it? The way we did it is very simple. We interviewed hundreds of different types of cross-functional physicians and asking them the different questions of the symptom of the brain tumor, right? What are the preliminary, absolutely at the beginning, the symptoms. So what we found out, some of the time, the first thing they say, I'm having a headache. So then what do? When you have a headache, you go to a regular physician. That takes you 1 week of appointment time. Then you go to the regular physician. He just say, okay, how many fingers? Okay, how many fingers? All those small stuff, right? And then they said, okay, if did you take Tylenol? Yeah, I took Tylenol. Okay, didn't go away. Okay, I'm going to give you a prescribed Tylenol. So the patient comes back, go there, prescribe Tylenol, do it for 2 weeks. It doesn't go away. It is becoming worse. Patient call. Oh, doctor is not available. Another 2 weeks pass by. Got an appointment. Go to the doctor. Doctor said, when is the last time you went to the like an ophthalmologist? Did you check your vision? Right? Then go to the vision. So that is so what we found out, after we come up with a very simple question, a 10 question, yes or no answer. So as soon as any symptom related to your brain, anything, even slightest. So even if you go to the doctor for regular headache, nothing to do with brain tumor, is still the first thing the nurse will do, give you a paper, fill out this form. As soon as you fill out the form, based on the yes or no question, immediately within 10 seconds, as soon as doctor comes in, if they know you're an abnormal group based on your symptom, doctor will immediately say, hey, look, I'm not going to treat you today. Within 2 weeks, there's a cross-functional physician team will be there. You have to be there at that time. Then what we did the complete rescheduling of all the physicians, brought all of them together under one umbrella. Anybody who's an abnormal group, they typically come over there, and then all collectively decide what stage they are. So now what's happening in Dr. Rosenblum's department, majority of the patients are diagnosed in their stage 1 on the cancer, right? So that is a very small example I gave you in a tiny little hospital, So we have done, because as I told you, any work, there's a process. Any process, there is a variation. If I tell you, I use the word any work, I didn't say large corporation work. I said any work, there's a process. And if there's a process, there's a variation, right? So that's what. So it can be applied in any organization, even a
So
small.
let's build on that. It's a great example in healthcare. You said any process, any work, there's a process, any process is variation. What about, you and I talked about this, some work in inquiry, in exploration, in experimentation, in innovation, where we don't know what to expect. There's not a whole lot of data. We're literally going on a hypothesis. Are there applications of Six Sigma? Are there applications of this in really innovative approaches where we don't know what the answers should be and we don't have a repeatable, predictable outcome? How would you apply those here?
So basically, there is something called the new product introduction or new process introduction, right? That is this. It's called NPI, and you applied not the regular Six Sigma. You applied design for Six Sigma. So design for Six Sigma, there is a 5-step process. It's called IDDOV, which is basically identify the opportunity. Then D for define the requirement. Then the second D is called the develop concept, and then optimize the design and the verify the design. So a lot of the brand new type of innovation coming out. So for an example, in Caterpillar, when you did the design for Six Sigma, there's more than 200 patents has been generated. 200 brand new patents has been generated. A lot of the brand new innovation came out from those design for Six Sigma type of innovation. And there's a lot of different tool sets. When I talk about, identify business opportunity or develop, concepts and all, there's a lots of different types of tools there that we teach. These are like almost, I should say, 12 to 16 days of training, rigorous training. And from there, a lot of the new ideas generated. So for an example, a lot of the time what happened is that there is a particular projects, as you know, is so broken. And the concepts are so lousy, right? The concepts are not good. And you cannot improve upon. You can improve, doesn't matter how much you do Six Sigma. You can do a still to a certain degree, then you say, I cannot improve anymore. Those are the projects, we take them into the completely brand new approach and apply design for Six Sigma to make as a new kind of a robust product or process.
So I want to thank DevTud for jumping in. How do you reach the decision to create new revenue impact? And do you have any examples from the pandemic where the research has been challenging?
Most of the revenue. So for an example, on the Caterpillar example I gave you on that particular one, this is very funny. In Asia, like at that time, I'm talking about 1998, 99, that Caterpillar was trying to, used to market. They're one of the pioneer in Asia initially. So in 1980s, 1990s, early 1990s, they used to try to sell $5 million equipment, art equipment, in India and China. But at that time, India and China was not booming as much. So there's no demand for it, right? So they thought Indians and Chinese will never buy that type of, highly expensive equipments. So they completely quit on it. The problem is that when the China and India are booming like crazy, at that time, they're not marketing any of those products at that time. So based on the data, we told Caterpillar, this is the time you should market. Even if you charge instead of 5 million, even if you charge 6 million, it's still India and China. They're so hungry to buy those. So the first $1 billion revenue came from Asia as soon as Caterpillar started the marketing. Because even though they failed in 1980s, they failed because at that time, India and China is not ready to market. So it's all about the data driven that way. I like very blunt with you that I didn't do any work yet after the pandemic. As you know, last 1 year, you and myself, both as a consultant, are still working from here. We are still doing a lot of long distance and Zoom type of consulting. I've been doing a lot of other consultings, is kind of doing a lot of project by Zoom. But with respect of the pandemic research, I didn't see anything yet, so I cannot comment on that.
Got it. So another fascinating comment in our podcast interview is you were very candid. You were very blunt in some of the consultants in our world kind of set the wrong tone, set the wrong stage, set the wrong expectations with clients. Talk a little about without obviously naming names, what goes wrong in that consultant-client relationship interaction that makes some of these potential results not believable?
So the challenge is that, like for an example, when the first we even started the Six Sigma and Design for Sigma, even I wrote some of the very authoritative book on the topic. And one of the things I just very crystal clear mentioned on every single of my book and my talk, that how critical that leadership has to be led by the leadership, the senior leadership. So having that conviction, but unfortunately, we are all human and we do mistakes. And our number one goal is to make money. So I have a different goal. My goal is to make money not at any cost. My goal is to make money by making my clients successful. Otherwise, I cannot sleep well at night, right? So, and plus, because I became an authority on the topic, I became more conviction, literally more. I have tremendous amount of conviction that, if Subir Chowdhury goes to a client and cannot give 100x return, in fact, a lot of the time, my client even wanted to slow me down because they're saying, Subir, your goal is so big, it's so tough, right? Because that is the way I am as a nature. So that really helped. What really give me a lot of pain, David, is that, if I don't know something, see, leadership disease is we pretend we know something, right? If I don't know something, we should bluntly say, I don't know, right? What is wrong with that? Do you think that I should claim that your expertise of your subject? No, not at all. Doesn't matter if I'm the top 50 management thinker or not. That is not my expertise. That is your expertise. You put 10,000 hours on it. So how can I claim that expert on your area? So if somebody asks in your subject area, my client, I said, hey, gentlemen, I'm not an expert on this. If you're interested, I'm going to contact one of my friends and I'll connect you with him or her. See, sad part is that in consulting business, a lot of consultants, they come in, they know everything, right? And they will find somebody to make money at any cost. So that is number one issue. Other issue is in consulting business, another thing what I find, a lot of the time we hire some of the top business school MBAs as if as soon as they graduate, they became a big consultant, and we just put them and just go there and tell them, I can give you hundreds of success, like unsuccessful project they have done in different countries. Some of the large, I don't want to name some of the big 5 consulting firms. And the reason is that they just send bunch of Harvard and Wharton graduates or whatever. They cannot solve the break system problem. They can't.
I remind, you're gonna laugh at this, but I remind my kids often that I didn't paint on the gray hair. You just we earn those every time we work on a project. So let me ask you, on that note, the next generation of leaders, how do you emphasize, how do you prioritize an investment in really learning Six Sigma and because it's been around a while. It's almost like, you don't want to say it's passé, but it's not this week's flavor. There's always a new flavor or a new idea that people want to latch onto versus something that we know works. We know it can produce incredible results. How do you train? How do you develop the next generation of leaders to think this way as they get increasingly additional opportunities to lead?
So the first thing is that the most important element they have to understand is that any leader's business, number one business, to become the organization, to become more financially solvent, right? That is any good leader's job, to make sure organization is financially solvent. Like for an example, it's much more like finance is the kind of the money, cash flow, and all this stuff is the blood of the organization. But the question would be not at any cost. It should be with ethical way of doing it, ethical way. So once they understand that part, then you have to think about, okay, how an organization run in the first place? What is the foundation of organization? Any organization is run by people, number one, right? And number two is the process. What the people do. People do work, and every work there's a process. So that means, that's what I talk about. Quality is combination of people power and the process power. Right? So the first thing the leaders, so any younger generation, if they wants to become the leader, they have to understand and recognize they cannot be the leader for some people. They have to leader for all people, right? So how you develop the communication skill so that you can effectively can communicate from the worker level, assembly line worker level, to all the way to the senior leadership level, to the board level. So if you as a younger generation, if you can develop that skill set, that good communication skill set, right, so that you can be an effective communicator. Why Mary Barra is such an amazingly lovable General Motors CEO. Everybody loves Mary, including the suppliers. Everybody loves Mary because amazing communicator, humble communicator from the lowest level to the highest level, right? And brilliant. And other perspective is the leaders. Number two is that once you understand that effective communication, the number two, I think, is extremely important. The true leaders always dedicate themselves for learning. Learning. Every single day, you have to ask yourself how little you know and how can you learn more. Continuously go for learning, right? So if you ask me, you are telling me I'm the world's top expert in quality. No, not really. I'm still learning because there's so many things to learn, even in quality, right? So that is the number two. And number three comes in, okay, people are the one who will be doing that. So if as a leader, if I cannot teach them the how to make a good process as a leader, that means I'm not doing my job. So how can I make sure myself become knowledgeable to make the process robust? How to make the process good, effective? Once I learn it, then it is my job to teach to the rest of the organization that how to apply those right process. So if they can really practice those three as a upcoming leader, they will become so. And you call it Six Sigma or not, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Name is a fancy name. Don't go there to do Six Sigma. Oh, okay, I wanted to do it because everybody else doing it. That's the reason 95% of Six Sigma deployment did not generate 100x return. They generated 5x return, 2x return. They did not generate 100x, 200x return. Every example I gave you, those are like 100x, 200x, 300x return, right?
This also has downstream. So if you think of vertical integration, and if you think of not just GM, but GM suppliers, and maybe even their suppliers, this has the potential to really create that ripple effect or that impact across the entire value chain.
Absolutely. Like in Caterpillar situation, what they have done, they mandated their suppliers. And guess what? What they done? What a visionary organization. They even made sure that their own people, not consultants, their own people, Caterpillar own certified people, certified by us after they finish the project. Caterpillar employees, certified master black belt, they train their suppliers. They trained their suppliers and did the project. And once the suppliers got the taste of it, a lot of the suppliers said, I'm going to do it myself.
They wanted it, sure.
Right? Because it's not only, so, and we have that situation a lot. Like, look, David, all of my business, 100% of my business comes from my referral of my other client. So I recently got a contract from Navistar, one of the America's largest truck manufacturer. And I got a contract from, and I've been helping them in the engineering organization. And an amazing part is the reason I got this, because one of the former executive from GM now works at Navistar. So he saw the result there. So he literally wanted us to come in and help new organization. And all my clients develop based on that way. Because once they get a taste of it, they value it and they wanted to make a difference.
Similarly, could I, if I'm head of sales, or if I'm head of marketing, or if I'm, in charge of a P&L leader, leadership in one piece of the organization, can I implement this within my organization? How does that work if it's not enterprise wide?
So, ideal client would be enterprise wide, but traditionally what happened if you have a P&L, like especially in a large organization, right? You can come in and saying that, okay, I just wanted to apply this in product development area because I have a lot of issues in the product development area, right? Or in marketing organization because I have a lot of these issues on this area. So what happened is that on that case, the tool sets, so even though I'm calling listen, enrich, optimize, the tool sets for engineering is different than if I go to the marketing organization. See, that is the reason. See, what we don't like to do is that we don't want to go there and cookie cutter type of example, right? Because majority of the organization's leaders are not Jack Welch type of leaders. Jack Welch, what he did in Six Sigma, the reason he became successful, what he did, he literally trained the people in a whole 16-day or 20-day of training. Then what they did, after they did the project in marketing organization, then he said, okay, if this process you learn in marketing, I'm going to transfer you from marketing to engineering. You go there and help work because you learn the techniques. So if the process works there, you go there. And then he put the engineering organization people to HR. Now, he's unbelievable leader. That is a one of a kind, right? That type of leader, not too many people like that type of leader.
I'm thinking, what a fabulous opportunity for somebody in marketing to really go understand engineering and engineering to understand HR. So you're cross-pollinating my domain expertise with now process optimization across the entire organization.
That's what he did. But that I cannot give you even more than 5 examples like that. Not too many, right? Like that. So traditionally what happened is, so then one of the challenges, when we have done that type of work, one of the challenges what we find, one day I came in to my office, call all my colleagues, and I'm saying even the Six Sigma itself has a flaw. And even myself, at that time, I was absolutely at the pinnacle of my career. And I have a bestseller on that subject. And I'm saying, no, there is something wrong.
Is that like calling your own baby ugly? Is that what that is?
Yes, it is. See, I always criticize myself. That is the way the new book comes out, right? That is the new innovation comes out, because I'm continuously thinking about I'm not good enough. Because once you think you are the best, then life stops, right? You always think about you are not good enough. So that is one of the things I do. So what happened was, that was the time I came in, because my idea was, hey, if I look at the Six Sigma curriculum of all this application of the tool sets, 80% of that may not be applicable in a tiny little hospital. So why I need to teach them all these statistical methods of 16-day? Rather, why don't we customize? And that was the way the next generation, I call it, of Six Sigma came out from my book, The Ice Cream Maker. I call it Leo, Listen, Enrich, Optimize. So what we do, we go to a organization, try to understand what are the tool sets they need to solve their problem. And we don't teach them anything else. So every single Leo deployment is completely different, not even identical, every single department. So for an example, if I do Leo in engineering, I might be teaching a 10-day course on Leo in engineering. If I go to the Leo for HR, it might be only 1-day course or 2-day course, because majority of the tool set, he doesn't have any application, right? Because I know most of the organization will not have the Jack Welch type of leadership to do the cross-functional like that.
So let me ask you, you and I both have met Alan Mulally, former Boeing executive, Ford executive, just incredible gentleman and leader, and I admire him immensely. I can't help but think of post-Alan, Boeing, right? And this whole Subir 737 MAX disaster. And what I got to ask you, how do these global brands, these incredible companies with presumably very competent, capable leaders go so sideways? How does it get so bad?
It will even go even more sideways. I'm sorry to tell you. And I'm telling you publicly, right? Why? Boeing's problem is that, I think, number one, monopoly. When the monopoly happened, there's not too much of, too much of competition.
We're the biggest player. Where are you going to go buy from, right?
Not only that, another problem is that a lot of the defense contract, American defense contract, all handled by Boeing. They don't go to Airbus. They don't, right? So when that type of monopoly happened and they're making money like crazy, they didn't think about how to design optimization. Boeing's number one issue right now, if Boeing CEO right now call me, I can say them, if he personally commit, he's going to lead the effort. I can say publicly, I'm telling you, $20 to $30 billion right now in waste alone. Guaranteed. Most importantly, not only that, most importantly, what is most important for humanity, to make the planes robust. I'm not sure. Every time I fly Boeing, I think I'm uncomfortable, even now. Why? Because they did not use some of the principle. It's much more like Boeing is still 1980s, 1970s General Motors. That's the way I feel.
So I'm now really curious. So I appreciate that public profession. How do you assess that? How do you know that amount of waste exists that a process like yours could impact?
just simply reading by Wall Street Journal, talking to some of the senior leaders, even within Boeing. I discussed with some of them. They even shared, some of the challenges, and plus some of the things I'm reading in the public place, even in Wall Street Journal, that the investigation and all these things happen is about it is about the product issue, because they are doing much more like WhackaMole engineering. They're not doing like a preventative, robust design, robust optimization.
For our audience, that's a very technical term. The whack-a-mole engineering is a very technical term. I want you heard it here first. So Subir, how would you, I'm genuinely curious in a Boeing type scenario, let's say the CEO called you, how would you tackle that? What's your process? How would you start? How would you help them embrace this idea that we could save $20 to $30 billion?
No, the first question is that if the CEO really believes or CFO really believe that it is a realistic number, right? That do you really believe that you have that 10%? So, some of the companies, when I went, I asked the organization, and when the organization told me, Subir, can you save me $2 billion in 3 years? I said, wait a minute, $2 billion in 3 years? Are you out of your mind? I said, can I find $2 billion waste in your organization? First question. Then they'll say, Subir, are you kidding? You can find $10 billion waste in my organization, right? So that is a $250 billion company, right? So first question is that I'm just guessing based on what I read and so much of screwed up things, what I've seen, right? Based on all the papers and everything else. So I think having that type of dialogue. So if the CEO says, okay, I strongly feel we might have $20 billion type of waste, okay, time out. First 90 days, we are going to select those projects, right? If we don't select those projects, suppose the number came to 10 billion of the selection, then we'll be targeting only 10 billion. Okay. So even on the process, if say, oh, Subir, because I never promised to client, this is a pure guess. I told you based on what I've seen from my experience, right? So that is number one. But number two, to me, I don't think they should focus as much. If they hire me, they should not focus as much on saving. Rather than they should tremendously focus on design, because they need design. Because a lot of those design may see if there is another 737 type of incident happen, they will suffer another 5 years, right? That is my major concern. That needs a completely different mindset type of training, mindset type of knowledge. And the reason I tell you, I met with some of the senior engineering leaders and gave them some education privately, no charge, free, some just intellectual education. See, for me, I feel that knowledge is the power, and knowledge cannot be quantified all the time, money. Because what I do is that basically I met with the leader and try to educate them, because it's my job. So once they educated, then they think, oh my God, Subir, we don't apply this. So some of those leaders told me those methods they are not applying properly. See, the challenge is, David, is a lot of the time our subjects, because they are not taught by the originator of the subject. So right now you're talking about the carb benders, your methods. Somebody will read your book. And they'll be trying to steal some of your ideas and then come up with different name, and they will teach it wrongfully. And your problem is that you have to go there and fix them, right?
This is why the books that I write are actually blank on the inside. There's nothing in my books. I'm going after the adult coloring book market. No, and you're exactly right. Is the misperceptions. So, talk about for a few minutes. Where do you believe Six Sigma? Where do you believe this operational physics? Where do you believe Leo will go in the next decade? So extrapolate forward as we get more automation, as we get AI and ML and 3D manufacturing, and there are things that are becoming increasingly less human-led and more kind of technology, automation, data-led. Does Six Sigma become less valuable, more valuable? Does Leo become more important?
Yeah, I think it is very important, because the thing is that you have to still, even if you do it in automations and everything else, if those processes are not robust, those designs are not robust, so people will be thinking more and more to make sure those are done correctly, so there is any less error happen. If the process of those, if the innovation of those becomes more robust, then obviously the less and less Six Sigma demand will go down, right? But I think it is a long way to go, David. It might be even because the challenge of human error will still continue. It will still continue. So the whole world becoming a completely error-free, that is not going to happen, right? Because what happened is that within the new systems and this and that, errors will happen. So the demand of the process, continuously process innovation, that is my belief.
What's the best way for our audience to learn more about your work, and how I know you're the author of The Difference, The Ice Cream Maker, The Power of Six Sigma. What's the best way for our audience to learn more about your work?
Simply Google my name, Subir Chowdhury, Google my name, or SubirChowdhury.com. That is my website. I'm into also at Subir Chowdhury in as you know, I'm also in LinkedIn. At Subir Chowdhury is in Twitter. Very easily reachable. Of course, I travel a lot, but somebody from my office will always get back to the customer, like whoever wants to reach. And that's all, so.
Again, for our audience, if you joined us late, Subir Chowdhury is world-renowned. We know each other through Thinkers 50 and the Marshall Goldsmith MG100 community, world-renowned for quality and process optimization, for Six Sigma, for really looking at processes and variations and how to remove those variations for more consistent performance, execution, results. Thank you for being our guest, Subir, on the Curve Benders podcast this morning and this live session. For our audience, don't forget, next week we got some great guests coming up. Jeff Parker from MIT. We've got Harry Kramer, former CEO of Baxter. I just had a great conversation with Mitch Joel, another Thinkers 50 friend. Erica Duan, author of the brand new book, Your Digital Body Language, is also going to join us. So thanks for coming. Subir, good to see you, my friend. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course. Bye.